In a project this size, you're going to go through a lot of skeins of yarn, and I am ready to join my last one to my next one. So I thought it would be a good time to look at some ways to do that. For this time, we're going to try the Russian join. I don't use it for thin yarns. It's too tricky, in my opinion. But for thick ones like this, thread the end of one tail into a good yarn needle and start working it through between the plies of the next ball of yarn, the yarn tail that goes to the next ball of yarn. Do it for several inches and pull it on through, and you must be very gentle to get it to happen without just completely destroying your next yarn tail. Pull it on through till you can release the end and straighten them out, pull it back until they've sort of melded into one strand. Personally, I leave a little of each tail sticking out. Not forever. I'll trim it off, but I find that it keeps it secure and more possible to knit with for the first little bit. So now I'm going to treat this like one strand and hope that it disappears into the work, the fact that it's really a join. We're ready for a purl here. 3 more purls. And you do need to be very gentle with the joined area, especially as it first comes up. But when they are knitted off as though one strand, then they actually become truly one strand in a few stitches. Get back where you belong, stitch. Here's my first really challenging stitch because I don't want to pull anything apart. There I've got a good loop. Now I do have quite a challenge to work with, but I'll do it with you so you see it's possible. It's time for a cable. 2 rows ago, I cabled 1 and 2. So we're ready for a 2 and 3 cable. So 1, 2, 3. And it just so happens my join is going to occur right on that cable. Let's hope it works. And you remember how this goes. In this case, the stitch that begins on the left moves to the right first, and then the other one goes to the left. Now, in a few rows, this should be all forgotten, just kind of a thick spot in the yarn. We probably will see my ends popping out, and I can use yarn snips just to snip them even with the surface of the fabric. I will try to make a note of that when I can see it and show it to you. But on we go. I'm ready to attach another piece of yarn, and here is the end of my brand new piece. Over here is the end of my old piece. This is a second method. It's very, very basic, but it often works quite well. When I knit this stitch over, a normal knit stitch, and the next 4 are purls, and I'm going to do them off camera, we will have a similar effect to what the Russian join achieved. The yarns won't be intertwined with one another. Remember, one was pulled through the other. So this isn't as strong, but with them caught in the stitches, it often works just fine, especially if you start, as I did here, leaving a little bit of a tail out, and then weave it in later. So if the Russian join gives you trouble, this is another option. Here they are knitted in. We still have this end and this end, and later I will need to either weave them in or tack them down using sewing thread. For 3 stitches, the 2 strands were run together. I consider 3 to be a minimum in order to be secure. You may find a few of these. This is how the company joined them. I'm just going to knit it on through and try to pull it to the back. If you can't stand that, because it really is a knot, you might want to knit to the nearest end of the row and then start over on the other side and make your own join and tuck the ends in, weave them in later. Time for me to join another ball again, so I'm going to show you yet another alternative method. Here's the last stitch I made with my old ball, and I'm leaving a 5 or 6 inch yarn tail for ease of working. Now I'm making a stitch with my new ball. Now obviously these stitches could grow and grow like this if I permitted it, so I won't. There are two options here. One is to simply weave in both of these ends, probably down these columns of stitches, and hope that's secure enough. And that, in fact, is the more traditional way. Tradition says you never, never, never make a knot in a knit. I disagree that it's always a bad plan. So I'm going to make one. This is the back side of the knitting. The blanket has a real right and wrong because cables only show up nicely on one side of the blanket, and it's the opposite side. Here are my cables, and here's where the knot will be. It's definitely more secure, and I've made a lot of money over the years repairing knits for people where they weren't knotted and they were getting high wear and the non-knotted joins backed out. That is what makes me say, if I know that I'm going to be using something or that somebody will a lot, like a child's garment, in this case, I'm going to use this blanket. I'm going to enjoy it every day all winter. So I think I would rather have that tiny knot and then I can neatly weave my ends in than not. But it is your decision. I'm just opening up the possibility to your attention. So this is yet another way that we can join. It will be completely invisible on the right side. I don't know if I can get where you can see it yet. Let's see. There's really nothing to see, but I don't think you can see that fact because I cannot get enough light into that crevice for you. However, to review, last stitch, first stitch, secure the two ends together one way or another, knotting or not knotting, and then weave them in. I will weave them in separately from one another because I think that two strands of super bulky yarn run together through the fabric might be too noticeable.